pretending it does. And you have to let that.
Reading looking to capitalise here now.
So now we see Reading trying their might. I remember this one, Cauldron. Why can't I remember her name? It's like a cauldron. Cauldron. And that one just bouncing in between potential receivers. Marriott, unfortunately, unable to corral it.
Cormac getting the disc towards the centre already, trying to get off that sideline. Brave shot by Leahy.
We expect nothing less from her.
Reeled in by Roach. Roach being wise as a young player, resetting the disc to her main handler. To Leahy, to Kavanagh. Kavanagh outside that end zone. To Cormac, and we don't know if the score.
Slightly sedated celebration.
Instead, we'll have a conversation.
No, it seems like there's a couple of Reading players agreeing to raise the roof, and it is a score, 3-2. So, Reading.
This wing going across the pitch. If you get them on that lower sideline, it's going to make those resets into the centre quite difficult. And if they go up the sideline and attack the sideline, they're still going to be stuck on that sideline, which is going to be very tough for any team to master, I think, this weekend.
Now that you mentioned it, those two big shots that Leahy took, the backhand earlier on and that flick there, both times kind of came from the high side to the low side, giving her receivers time to just get under it and win the battle that they're engaged in.
Pull. Coming backwards a small bit.
That is a brilliant pull, using the elements to her advantage. As it now arcs towards the opposite side of the pitch. Coleman back into the middle. Hunter prowling. Leahy looking for a hand block. She has been pressuring those handlers all game long. LaFrance back to Coleman. Got Denalic, takes it. Now they're stuck on that sideline like you're saying they'd try to, but Coleman very confident. Rebel trying to put a bit of pressure on. Lesniak, I think, tripped up Denalic, but then apologized. And Denalic hitting LaFrance, and that's great work moving to the high side, getting the wind on their side, through the middle, comfortably taken by Hunter, down to LaFrance. Brilliant handler work, playing it between each other. Denalic there to support, throws it around, bounces out of the hands, and hits the ground.
Very lucky by Reading. Really confident work through that zone, which is great. Getting it to that high sideline and penetrating the middle of the zone.
So now Rebel get another go. Oh, here you go for it.
Sexton is on the disc. We know she wants to take those shots. Pointing to the middle of the cup.
Stall count getting higher with every passing second. Ends in a hand block. Fantastic pressure from Denalic. Able to put that clamp down on Sexton's attempts. It's now Coleman standing in front of the end zone, right on the line. A quick cut, nice isolation, and a score to Hunter. Almost impossible to stop in that situation. 4-2.
Very tough. Rebel switching the match defense in the end zone. Wise choice, but unfortunately wasn't good enough.
It's one of those things when you're dealing with someone with the versatility and athleticism of Hunter. If you're not willing to hit her, she's going to take you to task. And that's what I mean. When I say hit, I mean body.
Yes.
She had an open lane and was immediately able to run in that direction. Coleman is a fantastic thrower and was going to get it to her in either of those scenarios. You really have to take something away with your body and the other part with your legs. But much easier to say when you're standing up here in the booth.
Exactly. No, you can't afford to open the gate for players like that. See Reading really working through that zone well. As you said earlier, we got started on that low side, got it up to the high sideline, really aided with those leading passes, allowed them to float those backhands out in front and just tore the Rebel zone open, which is good.
So as a Rebel alumni, I believe criticism is well within my remit. I think that's what they're missing, is that second pass, that initial cut. You saw when Denalic got it and she played it through to Hunter, through to LaFrance, back to Hunter. And it was always that handler from the far sideline, from the low sideline at times, continuing to push through and then just making themselves available behind the zone. So you allow the first throw to get it up to level with the zone, and then the next throw is just to where you're waiting. Rebels seem to not have the faith that that throw, that cut setting up that throw will come. So either they go in for the pop and nobody's there to get the second one, or they just stay behind the cup and nobody's really got the ability to throw it all the way through, apart from twice Leahy over the top.
Yes, struggling, but here we are. Sexton through the middle of the cup already. Leahy now looking upfield, reset to Cormac. Really tight cup again by Reading, forcing Rebel backwards to Leahy. Through the middle to Kavanagh, very unlucky.
That was the kind of pass we were looking for, and I did see O'Mahony making the next play, so it was slightly behind her, but still going for the right move. Seemed taking a page out of Reading's book. Caudron tries to get it down the line, but that backhand was always going away from her intended receiver, Kaija Ryback.
Again, trying to put that outside in on the disc. The wind pushing it into the turf. Cormac taking the disc on the high sideline.
This is the kind of scenario where I'd almost just want Caroline Sexton to pick it up and launch it deep immediately. You can see her pointing.
She wants it. She wants that zone to move.
There's so many bodies around. Leahy lashes one deep. Not a bad look.
No, Leahy using that wind to aid those high release backhands.
O'Sullivan was unable to get there in the end. O'Sullivan, one of the few people to make that cross trip, has been a Gravity alumnus. Also played with Jabba, now playing for Rebel, and they have a bit of a rivalry out Gravity and Rebel.
Just a little bit. I won't talk about switching clubs. I can't talk about that.
Why? Did something happen in Cork?
I couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
Not that I started with Rebel and went to Ballincollig and now I'm back to Rebel.
Oh, that's bad.
It's great fun. And here
Didn't
we
you start
see
like 2 years ago?
I'm playing nearly 5 years now.
Oh, okay.
Started in school.
Oh, okay. Is that why you... Wait, Gloucester or BCI?
Gloucester.
Gloucester. That makes sense. And you went to Rebel first. You weren't part of the schism, though.
No.
You just decided to join Ballincollig afterwards?
Yeah.
Oh, Caroline. Tries to get it to Cormac. Lots of spin, right angle on the disc, but the elements just decided against it. You know, it's times like this I'm glad I'm not out there.
Yes. And I cannot wait to get out there later and throw turnovers. It's going to be fun.
Well, you got to lead from the front.
Exactly.
And that's what you're all about. Interesting to see UCC's hopes. Who do you think's the best varsity team in the men's side of Irish Ultimate right now?
It's hard to deny Trinity at the moment. Trinity playing well, being consistent. A lot of players on those international squads, which helps. And just really had the mental game down, which is good.
That disc just a little bit too high and bouncing out of the hands of Charlotte Marriott.
Sexton here now picking up the disc on that low sideline. Reading look like they're going to trap. Yes, forcing Sexton towards the sideline, pushing her backwards. Cormac looking to swing. To Leahy. Very unlucky from O'Sullivan. Just dropping that pass through the middle. Reading looking a bit relaxed though in that zone. Not too worried.
Well, they have earned themselves an advantageous position and just not letting it get to their heads, although that one again bouncing out of the hands of Marriott. They're asking an awful lot of her to try and take down some of these shots. She is quite the athlete, but right now not quite able to get her hands around them.
Leahy on the disc. Front of their own end zone. Dangerous place. Here we go. Going for that deep look again. Unfortunately, not coming off. The wind saying, no, not today.
And I think that's a sign of the frustration. They can't seem to find a way to bash through the zone. Now they're just trying to throw around it. Unsustainable.
Yes, zone offense being about patience and mainly a mental game.
Wars of attrition. As now we see Sexton momentarily taking off her hat, revealing that fiery mane. And they will need some of that fire in their defense if they're to get their way back into this match. Reset into the middle of the pitch, waiting there. Georgia Spencer sends it around. And we're starting to see a lot more Reading players get themselves involved. Perhaps to their dismay, As Sexton with the disc back in the middle of the pitch. She thinks about sending it and does. There are 2 Rebel players down there. But none of the players in that area of the pitch are able to read the disc particularly effectively, and we see it sail over all of their heads.
Fortunately, the wind caught that underneath of the disc, and it sailed away to the sideline.
Enya would be proud. So, Codry, or Cauldron.
Close
Something
enough.
about that name,
Close
I
enough.
just can't
Yeah, I
get
don't
it.
know.
I'm going to have to, I think.
A witch's cauldron. Come on, you should know that.
It should be easy, like.
Yeah, it should be.
Hubble, bubble, toil, and trouble. Let's see what she's able to cook up. Gets it to Denalik in the middle of the pitch. Still searching. We see Rebel have switched to match defense. You think maybe to try and energize their team?
Yes, I think so, and it also seems to be putting pressure on those catchers as well. Here we see Sexton on the disc. We're setting to Leahy.
Ready.
Lovely pop through the middle to Ryan. And does not worry about being patient. Fires it straight away, unlucky.
You can see her trying to shake it off. Doing Taylor Swift proud. But that's, do you ever do that yourself? You overthrow it ever so slightly and then you just try to throw out the hands. I respect how much spin she went for.
Yes.
You need that kind of control, but when you're putting that level of power into it, it gets a lot more inaccurate.
Definitely. Let's see now, Rebel should try and trap on the sideline.
Something known as coughing corner, when you're in that front corner of the end zone and the wind is howling into your face. Quadrant eventually able to get it off. Tireless work, but a huge hand block. Kavanagh says no and slams the disc down right in the face of Caitlin Simon. Welcome to Limerick.
Sexton now bringing the disc to the front of the end zone. And a fantastic switch of play here. 2 cutters going to the open side. Kavanagh going to the break side and receiving an easy score.
She's ordering her shelves with some nice bookends right there. Gets the big hand block and a lovely cut. Wonderfully set up by Sexton. Great break as well. Difficult again into the wind.
Fantastic. Very tough for Reading to set up in their own end zone. Lovely hand block and a well-deserved score by Kavanagh.
So 4-3. I think that was a hold. So Rebels started that point on offense. It was ages ago though. Yeah, sure, fuck it, it's 4-3. It's fine. It'll do. I was thinking B. Like that. 'Cause if they scored previously, then it has to be Rebel. See the way this was also a hold?
What's the whole thing again?
So if you start on offense then and score, that's an offensive hold because
Will
you
they
held
stay?
possession. Like obviously they didn't because there's so many turnovers, so it's hard to follow. The way to remember is
Yeah, it's quite
you
tight.
can't have 2 different teams have a break in a row. So it can't go black, red
Nah, that's
on
not
this
staying.
side.
No, I was at break the first time, and you said for the 2, so then I was just keeping scores.
Yeah, because they scored and then their second one was a break. But in order... Are we good to go? What?
Nice. Would have been handy to know that.
Would have been nice.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, in the interests of keeping things professional and acting like we have always been in the loop, I am Lorca Murray. It is my distinct and distinguished pleasure to welcome you to Siege of Limerick X Point 2. The snow stopped us, but the sun can't. It's windy, it's wonderful, and it's wild. I am here with Killian Leahy. Killian, how are you feeling this morning?
Feeling great. Loving this not really siege weather. Excited to play and play some fantastic zone over the weekend. The wind really helping that.
If you're a fan of Tactical Ultimate, that disc skating over the hands of 3 intended receivers and eventually able to get it down there. Hunter with the disc on the far sideline. Sorry, that's La France. Still looking, taking her time, patiently waiting, and then gets the score and the throw in to Hunter. La France to Hunter. Brilliant stuff by Reading, and they have been ever so slightly in control of this game since going down to break at the start.
Yes, definitely. Reading showing that bit more composure in this wind against that zone that Rebel are putting on. And a lovely little hop in for the score.
That throw sailed over, I think, 4 different people, 2 defenders, 2 receivers, collected by La France.
We like to pretend that we meant the air bounce.
That's always the way. I don't think I've ever seen anyone intentionally air bounce a disc.
No, and if they do, they're doing it wrong.
So right now we are watching Rebel take on Reading. That is the pride of the People's Republic of Cork, taking on what is arguably the biggest club in the UK, fantastic outfit, Reading. Last year, I believe they brought over 120 people to one tournament across 7 separate teams. They are entirely about team culture, cultivating a youth program that builds up into their senior squads, entirely developed by Reading for Reading. It's fantastic to see. See the likes of Denalik, the captain Cauldron, as well as Avril Hunter out there leading a squad of relative unknowns. We've seen some fantastic plays. La France has been brilliant. I've actually been quite enamored with Marriott, trying to see if she can get anything done. And of course, keep your eyes on number 21, Tiffany Yu, who, while once broke a pinky falling off Heelys, is quite a good player and has apparently learned how to coordinate herself slightly better. Who should we be looking for on Rebel, Killian?
Rebel have some good experienced players. We've got Sexton and Leahy have every throw in their arsenal. Leahy particularly liking those breaks and those insides. Sexton not afraid to send it deep. And now here you see Leahy on the disc, penetrating that zone straight away to Ryan, who unfortunately looked away, looking for that next pass before focusing on the catch.
It is a classic error, but one I doubt we'll see her make again this weekend, as she is known for being very good at making those kinds of adjustments. Now with the disc, Coleman, lovely step through D by Lesniak, coming across and tapping it away. Getting a block on Denalik. That'd be an interesting matchup to watch.
She's going to be happy with that block. Here you see Leahy sending it again, turning that disc. Oh, Brian, just unlucky.
That one was dropping
Roach.
all the
That was
time.
Roach.
That one dropping all the time. You can see Rebel starting to take a few more shots at the hands of Leahy as Coleman now thinks about it herself. Fakes me out up here in the booth. Bouncing out of the hands of Denalik. Possibly the fingers getting a little bit cold. And now we've seen Leahy take big shots. So far she's been really the only one to do it for this team.
Yes.
And again, just launching straight away. Not really to a whole lot of space. Maybe would have preferred to see them try to reset it a bit there. Frustration starting to seep in. As here comes Coleman collecting it. Throwing it back through. Nicely taken. I believe that's Marriott on the close sideline. Pops it through, just getting through the zone. And this is the speed and skill that Reading bring consistently. Brilliant play. Denalik to Cauldron for the score.
Reading getting lucky. One of those passes cutting right past a Rebel defender.
No bias coming in here from the Cork man at
Not at
all.
all, not at all.
But I do understand what you're saying, Leahy was ever so close, putting a little bit of a spin cycle. But, and I think this is the critical but, Reading are seen far more comfortable taking those 5-yard passes. It's easier, I suppose, when you're being successful, but you play with Rebel, you train with these women, you know them quite well. How do you think they're going to bounce back from this? Who do you think is going to be the person to take charge?
I feel like those main handlers really need to step up. Leahy, Sexton and Cormac need to get their team firing, and their shot selection is going to change their cutters' attitude. Once they start hitting those cutters are going to feel more confident and they're going to make those cuts. You see Leahy taking those big shots on that low sideline. It's quite tough to pull them off. Maybe swinging the disc, getting to that high sideline, and then looking for those big shots is the answer.
Well, we will see, as we currently have a brief, I don't think it's a timeout, I think they're just taking a slightly elongated team chat on the lines. So we want to thank UL, the University of Limerick, Ireland's sporting campus. As you can see the wonderful facilities they have made available to here on the North Campus. They have cinema ones all across this wonderful place. As well as that, Ishka keeping the players hydrated, and Red Bull keeping them energized. Sponsors of this event, and we just want to give a thanks to them. As well as, if you're at home right now and you're feeling a little bit peckish, you might consider ordering from Just Eat. Definitely not Deliveroo or Uber Eats. They're terrible places. Just Eat, that is the one you want to go with. Maybe it's a little bit early. Well, you can also try some Fulfill Nutrition, the only energy bar that is willing to give us money to do this broadcast. Which means it's the best one. O'Mahony with the disc, middle of the pitch. And that was slightly better again. But that one just bounces over the head of Sexton, and she can't corral it on the other side, as here come Reading looking to extend their lead even further. Cauldron bubbling up some trouble. And there's the immediate move. La France, very impressive, very composed. And that bounces out of the hands of her intended receiver, Caitlin Simon, who carried the Olympic torch in 2012, but unfortunately couldn't carry that disc.
Need to watch that disc into your hand fully. Sexton on the disc now. Penetrating that zone, but unfortunately the wind not allowing it.
And you can see what I was talking about earlier. She has to go for the big long break. There isn't the pop cut who then gets to take the easier throw. They're trying to do a bit too much, as that one just going into the ground. I was praising La France earlier on, maybe slightly prematurely.
Yes, Rebel not seeming to have those cuts through the middle at the moment. Again, those handlers get that disc moving, then we need those cuts coming in. O'Mahony really moving that cup with her cuts. Swinging to Leahy, great swing.
It just feels like the Rebel cutters are each moving on their own, whereas Reading move as a unit. And here had the chance to get a score almost immediately. Hunter picks it up. Caudron, plenty of float on that one, but Ryan couldn't quite get there in time. LaFrance back to Caudron. Comfortably collects it. Calmly leading her team. Hunter outside the pitch, goes for the flick. Plenty of float, but unfortunately just a little bit too far ahead of Simon.
We see Cauldron really being a focal point of that Reading team. The dominance on the pitch is great and really getting her team moving.
Leadership at its finest. And you can see now Leahy, Sexton, Cormac swapping duties around who will pick up the disc and start off. And Reading have really started to work out this Rebel offense, knowing where to clamp down, knowing where they can give off a little bit of pressure, as that one just bounced out of the hands of Kavanagh. Caudron rushing to pick it up. Goes for the score. Leahy can't get there in time, and it's taken in by LaFrance for the score.
Reading's hard work in that zone paying off. Really clamping down. Rebel not moving through the centre enough, and unfortunately forcing those tough turnovers through the centre of the cup.
This is one of those moments where the team really starts to roll and starts to feel like they're moving downhill. Reading seem to have worked out Rebels' defense while also working out how they're going to play offense in this wind. It's difficult for Rebel. The defensive adjustments have been made ever so slightly, and they are getting the turns, but the problem is they never really look dangerous with the disc in hand. What kind of adjustments could they make, Killian?
I think the main adjustment here now is their mentality in the second half, coming out and make sure that they come out strong. You really can't let this first half determine how you're going to play the second half, and that's the big thing about Ultimate.
Absolutely, mentality is a huge thing as we watch two of the stronger teams in the women's division so far anyway. Traditionally stronger, but they do have younger squads, as highlighted in the preview article on ultiworld.com. So, I'm Lorcan, this is Killian Leahy. We will be back shortly once halftime has concluded. Keep it here all day long for the best Ultimate action in Ireland, and right now I'm willing to bet the world at Siege of Limerick.
I'll take your broken smile and mend it to the sun.
Seminal 2006 Looney Tunes and Brendan Fraser classic back in action. As here we are at the second half. Rebel looking to climb a mountain that they built themselves after initially throwing a molehill in the way of Reading in the form of an early break. We now see them 7-3 down. Reading have looked confident, more so with each passing possession. Their offense seems to be clicking. Their defense seems to be disrupting. Rebel, like you were saying before the half, seem to be making a mentality change. Do you think they have that kind of adjustment in them, considering the neophyte elements of their squad?
Yes, I think they have that adjustment in them, and I feel like that they really need the bigger players stepping up here, pulling the team together, and ensuring them that they can come out storming in the second half. But you really see Reading really well drilled in those passes down the line, putting the right angle on them, and really putting enough rotation to cut through this wind.
So, as the wind cuts through us, we'll watch these offenses attempt to cut through it. Rebel getting to start with the disc in hand, looking for an offensive hold, and their first score in, I believe, 3 points. They managed to bring it back to 4-3, but then Reading screamed out of the half with 3 consecutive points, looking very good. Leahy picks up the disc against this zone. It is very cramped in there, and she can't quite get it to Sexton. Would have preferred to maybe see a pop in there first. Cauldron picks it up, wasting no time. And a huge layout grab. Absolutely enormous effort from Hunter. And that's what she brings to the table. Versatility and tenacity. Gets it to Denalik. Back to Hunter. And you can see they're still playing on that high side, not letting the wind affect them. And it's died down momentarily. Fate is even on the Reading side right now. Denalik pops it through to Hunter. Quick. Play fluid. Fantastic stuff. And how do you stop it?
You got to give that break to Hunter, working hard, bailing out in the grab, saying, no, it's okay, I've got you. Rebel unlucky here. Trying to cut through that zone straight away. I think on a day like today, you need to be okay with going backwards and then taking the swing. If that pass isn't on through the middle, don't force it.
That's the difference between the opening few points and how we've seen them play in the last few. I saw Leahy throw about 20, 25 passes for a turnover went over on one possession. She was absolutely fine working it, taking those recessions, moving back forward. It's a natural element of the game. She was comfortable in it, but now they seem to just not have the patience. They have the ability. They've shown us they have the ability. It just seems they don't have the patience.
Yes, definitely. I think it's fatigue coming in and a bit of frustration. Rebels showing that they can go backwards at the start of the game and then swing to gain yards, which is the ideal way to break through the zone. But now,
well, now it feels like they only go backwards.
Yes, exactly.
So, Cormac on the line, marshalling the troops. Fantastic to see her evolve over the years. I was her coach when she was a first year. Quite timid woman who has grown into the role and grown into the sport. Now one of the leaders of Rebel. Or as I've always preferred to call them, Rebel, but then they got rid of that. Which I thought, Rebel, it was a brilliant version, like the female version of Rebel. Doesn't that make sense? Our cameraman, Lolo, appreciates it. He's the only one who appreciates me around here. So, Reading on offense, just about. Sorry, Rebel on offense. Cormac sends it to the middle to Sexton. She had the throw to Leahy, and now she takes it. This is better. That's what we were looking for. Swing, keep it on that high sideline. Back to Sexton in the middle. She has Kavanagh out wide. Caesar sends it to her. Collected. Kavanagh goes for an arching pass. Beautifully laid out in front, but unfortunately dropped out of the sky. Lizzie O'Sullivan seemed to be on a crash course for that collection, but couldn't get there in time. It's now Coleman. Relaxed. Big defensive effort by Lesniak. And it pops over the top. Rebel now with a bit of an opportunity inside. If they can keep that same style going from the previous possession. Sexton gets it to Leahy. Immediately throws it back to Cormac. But the movement isn't that quick. So Sexton, if she can get it to... Excellently done to Leahy. This is much better stuff from Rebel. Just the slight adjustments, that bit more confidence in each other, willingness to work. Sexton pops it through. That throw taken by Cormac. Absolutely corralled, but unfortunately the next pass bounced out of the hands of O'Mahony. So now, Reading get another look. Coleman telling them where she wants them as Rebel have switched to match defense. Do you agree with that decision, Killian?
I think it's okay on a day like today. As long as they keep that pressure on and really force those errors.
Well, they're able to get them down to the low sideline, not where they want to be. A nice pop through. Cormac tries to poach off. Coleman tries to take advantage. Ryan screaming across in between two defenders, Marriott and you, but she has put the pressure on, and that's her second Phantom D, haunting them a little bit.
We seem to have a foul call here, foul uncontested on the thrower. Lesniak agreeing that it's uncontested.
She is a very active mark, very diligent and dogged, but that time a bit too dastardly, coming across and getting the foul.
Yes, the disc attempted to be thrown back, unfortunately thrown off the pitch. I don't think you meant it at all.
So, could be an immediate sign of disrespect. We know.
Tactical decision here.
So, Coleman. Quick check of the disc to make sure it is still in okay condition. And a bit of conversation about where they were.
Ryan putting her in her place.
As she so frequently does with the people she marks. And that one bounces out of the hands of Kodran. Leahy takes off, so does Lesniak. Nobody seems to be rushing to pick up that disc and send it. Would have maybe liked to see a shot there. Of course, their main cannon was the one tearing down the pitch to try and be a receiver. Sexton gives it back to Cormac. Has Ryan, can't quite get it there in time. That's back to Sexton, but bounces out of her hand. A bit too lackadaisical on the reception. Spencer pops it to you. Gives it down the line to Caudron. Great cut, setting it up. Thinks about floating it over the top, but holsters it. Excellent decision by Caudron. And then the high release that time tries to float it around, and you can see her apologize after throwing it. I like the ambition from Spencer, if not the execution.
It's one of those throws when you release and you know it's not going to make it.
You just feel, you can see the shiver run through her body of regret. And Cormac with a huge flick. Where's that been all game? A little bit inaccurate, but if you got that from the high side, that could be beautiful. Quadrant throws it through. Excellent collection. Brilliantly taken in by Spencer. Back to Quadrant, back to Coleman. And that's the kind of quick uprushing play we haven't seen Rebel be able to stop so far.
We see it was Reading get that initial movement, able to walk it into the end zone. Rebel unlucky.
So Coleman getting the disc from Caudron. And you can really feel Reading play themselves into this game, growing with confidence. At the start, it looked like Rebel had a slight edge. But since then, Reading's training, their composure has really settled and established itself. So, they are now in a commanding lead. Rebel will be looking to try and put a stop to it, but they are running out of time with each passing minute. As the game coming to its final exchanges. Killian, do you think Rebel have it in them to disrupt our live stream schedule?
Yes, I do.
You have to really, don't you?
No bias here at all. So for the girls who watch this afterwards and judge my commentating, I did say you have a chance.
Well, I feel like they'll certainly judge your commentating as being on par.
Yes, definitely. They have to say that.
You have to support each other. The main thing I liked about Rebels' offense on that last point was the fact that they started to actually play offense again.
Yes, I think we saw them going back to the way they were playing in those first 2 points initially. Okay with going backwards, taking those swings. Not looking for those swings as fast as they could to get to that high sideline, but definitely taking the right options, which is good.
So, big pull coming up out of Reading. Trying to send down the pitch. Leahy picks it up. What I'd love to see is put Cormac on the high side, get it to her, and let her launch that flick. That was one of the best throws we've seen so far in the game, but it was in a horrible position to try and get out of. And to a defender waiting for a lovely break across. Leahy's going to have to try and get it. She does. Takes it in well. And a beautiful inside break, but it bounces out of the hands of Ryan, unfortunately. She dropped a bit too low, a bit too quick. And now Rebel are back on the defense. Caudron. You see Cormac slowly making her way out of the downfield to cover her. And across to Nalik right in front of the end zone. It is not the line, just so everyone knows. Brilliant catch. Absolutely fantastic stuff out of Marriott, and then a bit of an Olay as Denalik tears that one away from the charging Ryan.
As they say, you scratch my back, I will scratch yours. Both of them bailing each other out with amazing grabs. Not a great day for one-handed grabs, but we'll take it when we can.
A great point for them anyway. You rescue my incredibly sketchy throw, I'll rescue yours. Brilliant stuff from both of those players. So now, Reading in a very commanding position. We have about 5 minutes left on the game. As Rebel lining up. There's still plenty to play for. This in no way knocks either team out of the tournament. Rebel can come back if they can learn the important lessons provided to them in this game, which are Killian.
I feel that the Rebel need to finish strong here now, really focus on their offense, stay composed, take the right options, and really use that high sideline to their advantage.
That's the main thing we haven't really seen them do. In the same extent of Reading, who aren't doing it as much now, but I think that's down to their confidence and their belief that they can throw it anywhere on the pitch. But that's just come from them taking the easier option, that high sideline, and working their way through it.
Yes, I think we see Reading really using that low sideline because they have the throws to play down there. Now we see Rebel here on offense. Sexton.
Sexton picking up the disc, ready to go. And again, O'Mahony does a fantastic. There's a huge throw. Not too bad of an idea. Maybe if she'd been feeling them out earlier in the game. But again, we saw O'Mahony make the undercut, try to come in and pull the zone apart, but there was no one in the space behind. They just feel like they're isolating their cutters, which is what you want if it's match defense, not what you want against a zone.
Exactly.
So now Coleman stuck in Coffin corner. As Rebel try to get her to cough up the disc. Almost does, but Caudron, where she is, where she's needed. I don't know if Coleman was able to get under that in time. It will be a spectacular grab if she was. Rebel were knocking on heaven's door, but unfortunately Sexton couldn't quite get it in. Is now Caudron under pressure. Tries to get it off, and O'Mahony not quite a Callahan. It's a Callahan! You'll take them when they come.
Rebel not as excited as you'd expect with a Callahan, but we will definitely take it. That pressure paying off. Reading looking composed in the end zone, but unfortunately the wind really tearing down.
A Callahan in Ultimate, for those watching unfamiliar with the sport, is when the opposition throws you the disc and you intercept it in their end zone. So when a reception in the end zone is a score, an interception in the end zone surely would also be a score. So a Callahan for Rebel. That's the kind of thing generally galvanize a team, but it does seem like Rebel are in a bit of a, okay, we've lost this one, let's put it away.
Yeah, again, I think Rebel here need to finish strong. O'Mahony with the Callahan. Credit to her, she's playing really well. She's the only player consistently crashing through that cup, trying to get those passes through the middle and move that cup.
Well, that's that O'Mahony energy and spirit. You can see it in Laura, the eldest of the O'Mahanys, as well as in her brother Sean and her sister Rosie. All fantastic Cork-based athletes. I believe Rosie is now turned traitor.
We won't talk about it. It's a touchy subject.
Never heard of her. Never heard of her. She
Don't
doesn't
know.
exist. As Rebel, hoping to get a break, maybe finish the game with a few of them. They opened the game with one, a break when you start on defense, win the disc off your opponents and score. And that is another huge pull from Sexton. Wouldn't mind seeing her throw a couple of those to receivers. Coleman with the disc, and O'Mahony still showing that energy, that intensity. As now gets to the middle of Denalik. LaFrance. And that into the ground. So, a lot of pressure. Putting them under it, getting the turn. Cormac gets it to Sexton. She has Leahy on one side. Goes for a beautiful high floating pass. Kavanagh's underneath it and gets there for the collection.
Absolute beauty of an inside backhand to the high side. Wind cutting against it. She was very lucky. Wind dies down as you release. Cannot, as a handler, you cannot dream of anything better.
So maybe not doing a lot of work to dispel the rumors that she is a witch, but definitely showing her magical abilities with the disc in hand. So 10-5. I think a couple of schedulers might be getting a little bit nervous right now.
Definitely, and from that replay we can see beautiful touch on that disc, cutting through the wind. Kavanagh really it in for the score. And Rebel looking a bit more upbeat here in these last few points.
As they would, as time goes. As we approach the 70th minute mark, 9:45, we will have Ranelagh, the reigning silver medalists in Irish Ultimate, from Dublin, taking on GB under 24, which is, of course, the developmental side of the great British national team. So if you want to see sketchy passes and a lot of athleticism, you got to have to keep it here on the Siege of Limerick YouTube channel. But right now, we've got action for you as Reading with the disc in hand. Cauldron back into the middle. Hunter spreads it around to Nalek. Hunter again just keeps moving. She is so difficult to stop because she doesn't stop herself. Denalik thinks about the break but doesn't go for it. And they've had great work of picking the correct shots in this game, Reading. As now Denalik really starting to be pressured. That zone really clamping down. Trying to suffocate them. But that composure coming through. And curse of the commentator, as soon as I say it, it just bobbles past the intended receiver.
We don't mean to do it, Lorcan, but it just happens.
Well, maybe we mean to do it a little bit. We are both, well, you still play for Rebel and I used to. So a lot of affection for the Cork women. There's now Sexton trying to get something going. A beautiful pop through to Leahy. And there's the kind of play we've been waiting all game to see from them. That pop through and the second pass to a waiting cutter. It's what Reading have used to build up this lead. Maybe Rebel can turn it against them and start to take it away. There's now O'Mahony playing with Leahy, and this is much more active, much more action, although a bit too predictable as Georgia Spencer slams the door in O'Mahony's face. Hunter has Cauldron, goes for it, but Cormac steps across and knocks it away. Perhaps a bit too lackadaisical, but Cormac kind of saw that cut coming the whole time. Sexton really thought she'd go for a big shot. Beautiful swing all the way across and almost caught. The frustration on Michelle Leahy. She punches the ground. Hunter wastes no time in getting the action going again. Denalik through to Cauldron to Hunter. Back to Denalik. And just able to get there in time. But unfortunately, Cauldron couldn't bring that one in. It was a bit too far ahead of her. Got to respect the effort, though.
Yes, and Denalik really moving that disc well, getting every second pass and cutting through that zone.
He is very comfortable in the leadership role. As Sexton pops it over the top. It's floating plenty of time for Kavanagh. Takes it down. Denalik was coming in. Leahy is completely free. Loads of float. Fantastic vision from Kavanagh. And now they have the disc in the hands of one of their strongest throwers. Right outside the end zone, and a correct decision. Gets it back to Sexton. Now with Cormac. Jazz O'Mahony on the break side. Wonderfully sweeping, and now O'Mahony goes for it, but there's a reason why she's generally on the receiving ends of those plays. Unfortunately, the wind seemed to take that one away.
Yes, tough showing that flick grip to the wind, really blowing it just as before you release, and unfortunately turfing. But Rebel showing they have those big shots, two big throws. Leahy and Kavanagh really reeling them in.
Fantastic stuff. Especially from Kavanagh, so composed as well, with Denalik coming right at her, and she just took her time, went up and got it.
Exactly, and great to see both players avoiding contact. Always a nice touch.
And something we hope to see continued over the course of the weekend, although we want to definitely thank the first aid services for coming and making us all feel a lot safer, as Denalik puts it back to Cauldron. Back to Denalik, and this is better from Rebel. All of a sudden, they seem to have reimagined their hunger. And if you're hungry at home, remember, Just Eat, the best place to go and get food online. As now, Cormac tries to pop it through, but a bit too rushed. Unfortunate. Maybe she's been drinking too much Red Bull. And now things are getting a bit erratic. A couple of throwaways, the game starting to come to a close. Although there seems to be a call down on the other end of the pitch.
Reading and looking a bit frantic. Tossing a disc, trying to get those yards. Deep shot was on, but I don't know if I would have taken it.
Yes. As now, they're just going to discuss that one out. It did seem a bit rushed. It did seem almost like turnover, which can happen in these games. One mistake begets another.
Yes, and unlike Reading to rush that decision, we see Denalik and Cauldron really bouncing off each other throughout the last two plays, moving the disc swinging and cutting through that zone.
And as now it goes back to Hunter. That is one thing about these conditions right now. Teams are forced to adapt themselves ever so slightly. Both these teams very comfortable moving it around, but you know Rebel have a couple of cannons that they normally like to fire. Haven't really been able to get that side of their game going too much, although certainly more so in the latter exchanges. Cormac sneaking in. She's been so close to so many of those Ds in this game. Cauldron on the high side. Gets it through. Well taken by Spencer. And down the line. Hunter can send it and does so. Underneath it is you, but it bounces out of her hands. And she has had quite a quiet game. Rebel have done a great job of shutting down one of their more prolific young talents of Reading. So now Sexton. Starting on the high sideline. You know what I'd love to see? I'd love to see her just, this is a situation where you can pick it up and launch it.
Yes, but I think you got to keep that backhand kind of flat so the wind doesn't take it.
And there it is. Plenty of blade. And Denalik just read it better than Cormac or O'Mahony. That time it could have done with being blown a little bit further. Maybe too much spin from Sexton. As now we see Hunter gets it to Denalik. And like you say, just so consistent. But unfortunately that one goes to the turf. Which gives Rebel another opportunity. This one really extending itself as the game carries over.
Reading looking to keep Rebel on this low sideline. Use that wind to their advantage.
And they are doing a fantastic job of trapping them in there. It got to the point where Sexton just had to throw up something into the air. Cauldron was on the other end of it. Hunter tries to send it one more time, but that one a bit too far ahead of Simon. So, Reading, maybe their thoughts are already on the locker room.
Yes, I'd say so. A few rash decisions. We see Cauldron though being consistent. Lovely throws in the wind. Great touch and tough conditions like today.
As these tough conditions are even having an impact on our commentary booth. Sexton on the line, thinks about another deep shot and goes for it. That one comes out considerably rougher. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of contact from the defender. So you see Reading, Denalik gets it to Cauldron in the middle of the pitch. Spreading it out wide to Hunter. Now on the far sideline. Back through to the middle, but that one just a bit too quick and it bounces off the hands of Denalik. So will Sexton go for another deep shot or maybe try to reset and play a little bit? One hopes. And Kavanagh makes herself available. Bit more composed, and again they go for a long arcing one, but this is a bit of a battle. Cormac just misreads it, comes in too close. But that was a much better shot, like you were saying, just getting the balance right, Killian.
Yes, really using that wind to her advantage. Bit flatter, really pulled it out over the sideline as well.
Oh, plenty of bounce on that. I think Leahy was in the end just getting the crucial contact to take it away from any Reading defenders. Forgive us for the strain in my voice. I'm currently trying to fix a tent wall. As now Leahy goes for a big flick, but it falls between the two potential receivers. Kavanagh and Gall could not get to it. As now we see Cauldron all the way back on her own end zone line. And this point has gone from end zone to end zone, with neither team really able to get a grapple on the possession. And Denalik, an unforced and uncommon error from the experienced player. There's now Sexton. In this kind of situation, I'd like to see an isolation where either Leahy or maybe Ryan, somebody from the front of the stack, just tries to get free, make it as easy as possible for Sexton. And that time, I think it was Leahy almost got the block on O'Mahony. A bit of a miscommunication. But then O'Mahony gets it back, a lovely bit of contact, and Hunter's disc goes right into the ground. So this is starting to descend into a tit-for-tat battle.
O'Mahony showing her strength on the force time and time again.
Lovely float Plenty of people underneath it, but none of them able to read the disc as it slowly blows behind the cult group of players. So now Denalik pops it back and down the line. Spencer tries to get it back to Hunter. Instead, Leahy screams across, gets the block. Sexton picks it up quickly, which you'd like to see a little bit more of before Reading have a chance to set. Get the easier pass opportunities. That one's going to Cormac, but the wind has other ideas. It just stops it dead in its tracks. But again, and it's just descended into a bit of a shambles right now. Neither team is able to get a couple of consistent passes together. You see this frequently in Ultimate. Turns just leading to turns. Somebody has to get a grip on this point, on this possession. Sexton tries to with a magnificent flick break to Ryan, who then sends one herself, but trying to get that break to Cormac, a bit too close. Although there's an injury called. And that looks like Denalik coming off. That is a big loss for Reading. Fairly impressive hop, though. We certainly hope she's going to be okay. More so, I imagine, on the Reading sideline, as we've seen how important she is to their offense.
Yes, definitely looks like they're trying to stretch her hamstring now at the moment on that far sideline. Cramping up. Maybe not used to this AstroTurf.
So now Reading. Hunter with the disc in hand. Tries to get it across the quadrant. Almost does, despite the disc going very much not how she intended. So now Sexton on the high side. Ryan immediately cuts. Nobody there. Tries to get it to O'Mahony. It's still floating, but good defensive presence meant that Ryan wasn't willing to charge into that. Again, avoiding the body contact, which you like to see. So here come Reading again. Hunter, always willing to give and go. Throws it, moves immediately. Working with Coleman, but Sexton's there to clean up the scraps and tries to put it all the way back. O'Mahony's underneath it. It floats over both of them, and Ryan for the score! Picks up the collection, 10-6. I believe that point went on for almost 15 minutes.
Reading not as composed as we've seen them in this game. Maybe the fatigue is getting to them at the end of this game.
From
playing through zone constantly, working hard.
From 9-3 to 10-6. So Rebel are starting to fight their way back into it, are starting to push back the schedule more and more. But it's fantastic to see. And now you see just a little bit of conversation as the teams work out what to do next. Rebel seem to have got their tails up a little bit now, Killian.
Yes, as we said at halftime, I think they got that mentality check, really pushing through, looking to finish this game out strong so they can go into the rest of the competition firing.
What's so surprising is they came out at half and then conceded 2 in a row, 2 breaks in a row to go 9-3 down. But like you said, they did seem a little bit more energized, and then they really started to click. They started to trust the other handlers a bit more, go for those dunce receptions. On that point, it kind of descended back into the first half offense. But Reading seemed to have almost also forgotten who they were to establish that lead. And Rebel were eventually able to take advantage. Hopefully they can now press that advantage for themselves, because I don't think Reading are going to have too many more points like that.
Reading still have that great handler movement, but unfortunately the throws do not seem to be coming off. More turnovers from drops instead of the actual movement itself.
And Denalik still on the sideline getting attention. So we'll have to see if these younger players are able to step up and fill those big shoes. Coleman with the disc in hand. Tries to pop it over the top of Quadrant, gets it to her. And a lovely break from Quadrant, but just pops up in the air, and Spearing not able to get there in time. The wind stole that disc just like a group of monkeys once stole her clothes. Sexton. That is a true fact about Spearing. Leahy goes for a huge shot deep to the end zone. Ryan's there, using those GA skills, trying to box out, jumps up a bit too early. The second try can't quite get there, and Coleman bats it away, but is then forced to call an injury. And Reading players are starting to drop.
Yes, Ryan possibly tactically injuring a player, who knows?
That's that Rebel mentality coming out in the GAA.
Eyes on disc, the ref saw nothing.
She was a Cork footballer, believe, at under 18 and under 20 level. You're much too young to know that,
Couldn't
but yes,
tell
I'm
you.
pretty sure she was. So, showing off a bit of athleticism is now Caudron, who is watching her lieutenants fall left and right. Hunter still on the pitch, but taking a cutting roll downfield, hoping to try and generate some action there. And relying on Simon and La France in the handling position. La France, after being brilliant in the first half, kind of gone silent in the second. There's Hunter getting that initial pop. Back to her, working with La France. Now Rebel, if they can really tighten the screws here, they have Reading in their own end zone and are slowly suffocating them. But excellent composure by La France. They've asked, oh, Cormac goes for the D and Ryan screams through to finish the job. Brilliant hand block and team defense. As the wind howls, as I'm sure the supporters for Rebel back home are as well. Sexton looking for options. Leahy tries to give everyone down the line. Caudron pops through with the poach. That means somebody's free. They can't quite work out who it is. Leahy on the line. Nobody getting free immediately. They go for the big blade over the top, and it works! Excellently taken in.
When in doubt, play indoors. Indoors always works.
A fantastic philosophy, and one that I guess we'll have to admit is working right now. Excellent stuff. Lizzie O'Sullivan showing up when she's needed. Good thing she left Dublin to come and play for Cork.
Exactly. Fantastic grab. Bailing out the blade, and now we see John Doherty on the pitch. Former AUDL player trying to give some words of wisdom to his colleagues.
Saw him on the pitch earlier on in the point, really trying to marshal those troops. They have been on a 4-point run now. That blade working out, picking the spot in the wind just right.
Yes, definitely. Reading, we don't know what's happening. Hopefully they'll come out storming again here now and finish this game strong. I really like Hunter's initial setup on that zone look, setting herself slightly deep, preparing for that crash into the cup and nearly always getting the disc.
I find the problem was she got the disc a bit too laterally with the handlers. If you're going to set up down there, try and get a bit of distance with the gain. Otherwise, you're basically just setting yourself up for a dump pass. I did like La France, seemed to take a bit of control, a bit of command there, wasn't afraid of the moment when it presented itself to her. And a bit more of that is what Reading will need as they try to hang on to the lead they built so confidently.
I think Reading really suffering from that absence of Denalik now, from that movement through the zone. She was a crucial player to work with Caudron.
Alongside Coleman as well, who is not afraid to take the disc in difficult situations. Now we see La France. Coleman is back on the pitch, which is good to see, and has the disc in her hands. Looking for options. You on the far sideline. Plays it through the middle, but can't get there in time. Spencer just bouncing it out of her hand. And if you're Rebel, you have to be fancying your chances right now. Sexton immediately sends it. Looks for Kavanagh. Bounces over the head of her and Coleman, but not enough float to make its way down the pitch to goal.
Rebel unlucky, looking for another break. Unfortunately the wind not allowing it.
I did like that shot though, not letting Reading set up on defense, as now Coleman with the disc walking towards the front of her end zone. An unenviable position. They're working it together. La France gets it across to Hunter. Flicks it beautifully down the sideline. Well taken in by Spearing. Back into Hunter. And Rebel just stepping off a bit with the zone, daring them to throw it through. Coleman more than happy to oblige, gets it to you, tries to get it to Marriott, well taken down. She's got the grabs. Looking flashy in the pink tights, but unfortunately the throw doesn't come off for her. So now Sexton once again picking it up, preparing herself for the shot. Tries to send it around, but that was always dropping as the wind forced it down. Just wanted to say thank you for joining us here, Killian Leahy. This game going slightly over time, so he's off to play in his own match. Best of luck to UCC. Fantastic college. Better people as that disc floating up. So much action all around it. Lots of bodies running towards. And Rebel able to come up with the block. So now Sexton to Cormac. And this is much better stuff to O'Sullivan. And they are really starting to flow. Lovely all the way across. Huge layout block. Brilliantly done. Ryan was trying to throw it through the middle of the cup, but it didn't work out. There's a violation because the disc went on the pitch. So France was able to get a big D there, which could prove critical. And she's just going to work collecting these discs to marry it. Back to La France. I've been very impressed with La France over the past few points. Stepping up when her team needs her. Spencer gets it to Coleman. Coleman tries to get it to Marriott. Those hands like clamps, but that one just running through them. And Sexton, you know she's thinking about launching it. She has Cormac. Not a whole lot of movement elsewhere for her. Kavanagh eventually coming back. She has Leahy and sends it to her. Nicely done into the wind, but the throw that somebody needs to be willing to take on. Lee has options behind her. Lots of float on that one and just taken away. A bit too lackadaisical and punished for it. So now Reading with a real chance to put this match away. One has to believe. Knocking on that door. No one has answered for 4 points now. Coleman. Hunter. And that's what she's there for. So difficult to stop in those situations. We saw her exploit that isolation earlier in the game. Does so again when you need the job doing. She's the professional to take the task on. Excellent stuff from Reading. Brilliant fight back from Rebel. Showing that kind of spirit that denotes why their county is still famous for technically never recognizing England's occupation of Ireland. They never say die, even at their own detriment. So, Rebel, brilliant fight back, but unfortunately falls short. Reading able to hold on in the end, and hopefully we can see some of those talismanic players of theirs like Donalek take the pitch later in the tournament. Fantastic stuff. I've been Lorcan Murray, and this has been the first taste of action here at Siege of Limerick X.2. So, coming up next, we have the GB Under-24, the future of Great British Ultimate Talent, taking on Ranelagh. The people who go to Dublin know a fantastic club with a brilliant history. It promises to be very, very exciting. A lot of Irish international players, both from Under-24 and senior team on that Ranelagh side. So, don't expect this one to be over easy. Keep it here.
I'll take your broken smile and mend it to